share, please. The screen is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Anthony, and welcome to you all. Thank you for attending today. I think today's session is going to be absolutely fascinating. Thank you, Erik, for being here with us. I will give a little bit of an overview and background as to Erik in a second. We've been running these webinars now since the beginning of the confinement phase, way back in March. We've had over 55 webinars with nearly 6,000 attendees participating from all over the world. This, our second session of our upskillings, is with Dr. Erik Vermeulen, digital professor, video gaming lawyer, and ultra runner, on the topic of upskilling your digital game. Erik's thought-provoking and innovative views on business, technology, education, and the law have attracted international attention. He regularly serves as an expert advisor to international organizations and national and local governments all around the world. Erik is a professor of business and financial law and the director of international business law program at Tilburg University in the Netherlands. His research, including chapters of his academic books, can be downloaded from the Social Science Research Network. Erik has appeared at numerous conferences as a featured or keynote speaker. Erik has also worked at the intersection of the academic and corporate worlds. He's a senior legal counsel at Signify, formerly known as Philips Lighting. I think Erik can best be described as a content creator. He has a blog at medium.com where he shares insights in how emerging technologies are creating new opportunities across all areas of the economy and society. In our fast-changing world, Erik revisits long-held assumptions and theories and seeks to develop new models more appropriate to the next normal. He's a top writer in innovation and education on online publication platform Medium. Also, I think worth mentioning is that Erik does own a Michelin star restaurant in the Netherlands. Which one is that, Erik? What is the name?
The Kaperdamshoeve in Eindhoven. I can give you a presentation about the restaurant as well. I have to change slides, but I can do it.
No, it's fantastic. Erik, I first met you, I think nearly 2 years ago, right? At the EIB
Yes.
blockchain channel. And I was
Yes.
incredibly impressed with the insights you gave, but not just in the insights you gave and the work that you're conducting, but also in the way you delivered them. I mean, as a professor, you have a way about having people listen, and I'm very, very glad to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. I think this will be a fantastic session, and I will hand over to you, Erik, to carry on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, the difference is that back then we were in a room together, so I can move around and walk. If I start walking now, you will not see me, and you will probably not hear me either. So I have to sit down. Yeah, what I'm going to do before I share my slides, I'm also a practitioner. I'm a lawyer, and I'm going to look at how the world is changing for me and what I have to do in order to develop my digital skills. And hopefully that's going to help you as well. And then I think I want to spend a lot of time also on the discussion, answering questions and hearing from you what you see and what you are doing currently to develop your digital skills. I think we all have to develop our digital skills, whether you are a consultant or an entrepreneur. There's a lot of things going on, and COVID-19 is only accelerating things. And that's basically the context of the presentation today. So what if you are a technologist, an entrepreneur, you have a great idea, and you need help? You need to have a consultant. Could be a lawyer, could be an accountant. And here you see the entrepreneur and the lawyer accountant, and it's up to you to see who is who. Doesn't really matter. And the question then is, if you are a lawyer or a consultant, what kind of services do you want to offer, and how digitally savvy should you be? If you are the entrepreneur, how can you make sure that you select the right consultant? Because many of them are good, but also many not so good. And if you select the wrong one, that could significantly delay your project. So we look at it from both sides. Now, there's a lot of stuff written about it. So if you look at just lawyers, Gartner, and I think most of you know Gartner, Hype Cycle. They also have a Hype Cycle for legal and compliance technologies. I didn't know that, but I figured it out. And if you look at all these things that are happening in the world of consultants, it's all, let's call it legal tech. It's all about how technology can help legal processes, can help compliance, can help accountants. And that's what the focus is on. And the question is this sufficient? Yes or no? I think legal tech, reg tech, all kind of other techs that you see there is very useful because it can help us. And there's a lot of work that we do is standardized, so it can automate work. So we have more time for, let's say, more significant and important work when we want to help startups in fintech or any other technology. But the focus, if you look at it and you ask lawyers, it's on legal tech. And Gartner, well, they have a whole process map that we can follow in order to make sure that we select the right IT provider, the right project, etc. And I'm a lawyer myself, and the question is this it? To be honest, I'm not that excited. To me, what we see here and what legal tech is, or reg tech, is just a tool that will help make our current work easier. And it will help automate a lot of work, and it will help us make processes more efficient and effective. But there's so much more going on as a consultant. But also when you are a startup and you want to select a consultant, I think you want to select one that can add much more value than just doing the old work or knows how to automate the old work. So are we there yet? I think there's a lot of hype and a lot of reality going on in legal transformation. But legal transformation for me is much broader than just legal tech and reg tech, and most presentations that I attend or most papers that I read is about like legal tech, reg tech, or how technology can help automate the old world. But more is going on. And was mentioned by Nazir that I'm also a practitioner. I work at a company called Signify, which is a lighting company, and we sell lights. And I worked there for 25 years. And the last 2 to 3 years have never been more exciting. Everything is changing and really, really fast. So if you look at this slide, I think this is one of the most important slides I have. We see 2 light bulbs. And the question then is, what's the difference between these 2 light bulbs? Well, many people say, well, there's more technology, they're more energy efficient, the light is better, but it's much more than that. I think what we see here is a complete change of the business model. On the left-hand side, you see the traditional light bulb. And these light bulbs last for 2 to 3 years. So a business model was very simple. It was a replacement model. Nobody wants to sit in the dark. So as soon as the light breaks down, people buy new ones. And as a lawyer, as a consultant, it was relatively simple what we have to do. On the right-hand side, that's not a light bulb anymore. That's an Internet of Things device. That's a data collection device. That's a data analytics device. That's a LED lamp. They last 10 to 15 years. So the business model, the replacement model, was disrupted. And our clients thought, well, if this is happening, we are not so interested in the light bulbs anymore. We just want to buy light. So we start offering light as a service. And when you offer light as a service, you want to offer smarter services. So we thought, okay, we can put other sensors in the light. And with these sensors, we collect data. And we have a lot of data. We can offer crowd management services, social sentiment services, all kind of things that we have never thought about before. And I think that's the new world, no matter what industry you are in. And that's what you see on this slide. So I started at Philips in the 90s, and back then innovation was important, but most of it was done internally. And we had long product life cycles, steady industry environment. And yeah, there was some need for innovation, but not that much. There were like 3 players in the area. It was Philips, it was Siemens, Osram, and GE. Then in the 2000s, well, we see, yeah, innovation became a bit more important. And we started to talk about open innovation. But it was only in the 2010s that we see smart products, smart services. We see platforms. We see shorter life cycles, new markets, and new competitors. In the last 4 years, we went from 3 competitors to 500. just to show you how the world is changing. I already mentioned that consumers change their behavior. And now we're in 2020, and we see a complete change of the status quo, the so-called new normal that we often hear. And COVID-19, as I mentioned, only accelerated things. So on the one hand, we see an emerging tech-driven products and services. We see that the technology is growing exponentially. We see artificial intelligence, blockchain, augmented reality, virtual reality, 3D printing, and all these technologies are accelerating and amplifying each other. And that creates a completely new world. We see the environment becomes more important. We see that health becomes more important. We see diversity and inclusion. We see changing industry boundaries. We see Amazon becoming a financial player. We see Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company, becoming a healthcare player. And we see like the changing consumer behavior. They know more. They want to have a frictionless experience. And basically what we see is that we move from products like the light bulb to services, but that's already old. Now it's all about offering an experience, a frictionless experience to consumers. And in this world, well, everything is changing, also the world of the consultant. So again, if you are a startup or you're an entrepreneur or you have a new innovation and you need a consultant, what kind of consultant do you need? And if you are a consultant, what kind of expertise, what kind of skills do you need these days? I think that's the question we all should ask ourselves. Now, I'm also a law professor, and I was asking this question to myself already 5 years ago because I had the feeling that I did not deliver the students that the market needed. I did not train them well. Of course, I would train them like, the traditional legal stuff, but there was so much more going on. And what should I do to make them more digitally savvy, to prepare them for the new world? Now, a lot of things we can say here. One thing that we definitely should do as a consultant, as a lawyer, is helping startups, particularly when we have a disruptive innovation, to figure out what's the legal characterization. Is this new product, is it compliant with the law out there? Or should we think about this new product differently? We particularly see this in the fintech environment. But still, it's trying to explain and understand a new innovation by using the old world rules and regulations that are out there. Now, I'm also an innovation advisor at a law firm, and these are many of the questions they get. So, for instance, they have a number of artificial intelligence companies as clients. And whenever the client comes, they say, well, we have this new product. Can you tell us whether this is compliant with the law? Can we bring this to the market, or what should we change? And that's extremely important, that we understand the technology. And that's where you find the more tech-savvy, digitally savvy consultants. So they are able to understand the technology and then figure out whether the old rules still apply. And to many of my colleagues, that's the future lawyer, that's the future consultant. And I don't know about that. So I did some research, and I tried to look at movies and try to find what the future lawyer would look like. And there's not much out there. There are not many examples that explain the future lawyer. But I found one. And it's an episode from Star Trek that was aired in 1967. This all happened in 2267. And Captain Kirk, he needed a lawyer. And you see the lawyer on the left-hand side, and you see a lot of books. And there's this quote in the episode where the lawyer says, do you want to know the law, the ancient concepts of their own language, learn the intent of the men who wrote them, from Moses to the tribunal of Alpha 3, it's books. So yeah, many lawyers say, okay, you see, it's still, our work will not change that much. Yes, the clients change. Yes, the products and the services, they change, but we can still apply the old concepts to the new world. And the question is whether this is correct. And my experience, both at Signify, but as well at a law firm and as a law professor, is that this is not enough. Many more things are going on. And we as a lawyer, we have to become more open-minded, and also our clients want us to become more open-minded. They need our help. So I found this lawyer as another example. She works at a company called Peloton. And Peloton is this device that you see. It's a home trainer, but that's not a home trainer. It's a streaming device. It's kind of Netflix. It's a data analytics device. It's an artificial intelligence device. And even medical doctors are using it now to track the recovery of their patients remotely. And she is the head instructor and VP, but she was also a former lawyer, and that's why I use her as an example. Because we as lawyers, we as consultants, we have to do so many more things these days. And I just give you 4 examples of things that I see. Number 1 is that we are becoming engineers. So it's not only understanding the law and understanding the technology and applying the current law to the new technology. No, we become real engineers. And I give you one example. It's Bosch, the German engineering company. You might know them from the washing machines and dryers. 1 year ago, there was the Bosch Connected World Conference. And during that conference, one of the members of the board of directors, he was just explaining how Bosch was making things smart. So he was referring to the increased compute power, as you can see on his slide. It was all about connectivity. They were mentioning that there are already 20 billion interconnected devices. We see a more decentralized world, and artificial intelligence becomes more and more mainstream. We see more data, and algorithms are changing our lives and making more and more decisions. So an interesting thing that happened after the day after this conference is that there was this announcement in a newspaper where they said, well, and here you see the CEO on the right-hand side and the board member on the left-hand side. The person in the middle, Sean, IoT ad hero, they use him for their commercials. And I recommend you to watch some of them. They're kind of funny, and they show you how Bosch sees the new world. But what was interesting is that they announced that they are jumping on the Ethereum blockchain. And I just read here, German engineering giant Bosch wants to connect millions of cars, machines, buildings, and things, and get them to pay each other. Smart contracts may be the answer. And I use this example when I teach my students. And I ask them, what's our role as a lawyer? What's the role of a consultant here? And then they say, well, smart contracts is not really a contract. It's a computer code. And yeah, the Ethereum blockchain, I heard about it, but I don't really know what it is. But I don't think it's our role. It's more an IT person who should do it. It's a developer, a software specialist. And then I say, well, is that really true? Because here they want machines or things not only to be connected, but to pay each other. And now we talk about transactions. And the question is whether IT coders, software engineers understand the transactions well. And I was part of an experiment at Signify where we wanted to automate the supply chain. And what they did is they brought in a lot of interns from the Eindhoven University of Technology, and they started to code things. And then when the project was almost done, they asked the legal department, can you look at it? So we did. And we went there, and then we figured out that the whole thing that they coded could not work in practice. We asked there was one question and they couldn't answer. The whole thing collapsed. And then I realized that we as consultants, we actually can add much more value because we understand the transactions, but we cannot code. We don't understand the computer language. So the question then is, should we learn how to code? Yes or no? And to be honest, in the beginning, I thought yes. So I introduced a coding for lawyers course at Tilburg University, which became very popular, and also many law firms wanted to have this course. But I realized that being a coder is not just that you follow a course, you have to code every day. It's like learning a new language. So if I teach you Japanese and you don't use it in practice, it's kind of useless. So what should we do? And how can we add value in these situations? Well, one thing is that when we start programming or we want to help Bosch, it's not about the computer language that much. So it's not that you have to understand Solidity, which is used for smart contracts these days. The language ultimately doesn't matter. What you should do, you should understand the problem, and we should be able to come up with a solution that coders can then translate into computer language, so the computer can understand the solution that we have for that problem. And that's where we can play a very important role, much more important than I actually realized 3 years ago. So we, as consultants, if we really want to help our clients, or if you are a startup and you are a coder yourself and you have a new product, the consultant that can help you best is the consultant that can understand the problem and can help you find a solution in a way that you understand, so you can code for it. So we have to, and this is what my course in Tilburg is about these days, is less about the language and more about thinking like a programmer. And that resonates so much better with my students as well, because now they actually see the value that they can add to these projects. So I did some research and I found that many coders themselves, one of them is Andy Harris, and he is a game developer. He wrote many books on coding, and there's also on YouTube, you will find some of his presentations. And I definitely recommend them to you to watch them, because he says, well, most programmers make the mistake because they immediately go to the language, and they shouldn't do that. It's much better that you understand the problem. And when you understand the problem, you try to come up with you try to divide the problem, because if the problem can be too big to come up with a technical solution. So then you divide the problem into sub-problems, and then you try to come up with code that can actually help there. But before you start coding, you think about the concepts first. And this is just the algorithm, which is in plain English or any other language. And that's where we can play an extremely important role as lawyers, as consultants. One, we are pretty good in understanding the problem, and we can also write the solution. But what we used to do, we write the solution into a contract or into a law. And some of my colleagues think that's it, but that's not what a coder needs, because the way we write, it's too difficult for him or her to understand. They might understand what we mean, but how to code for it. So we have to learn how to write the concept into an algorithm that can easily be converted to code later. Now, and this is what I do in my new coding for lawyer class, which is so much easier now, because now the students understand the problem and start coming up with their own solution, and then test it with a real coder, whether he understands it and whether he can then translate it into computer language. It will look like this. So we only have like 1 hour, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But what if we want to, we have a bet. So here we have the Minnesota Vikings. It's American football. They played against the Kansas Chiefs. And we won, there's a bet. So I bet that the Minnesota Vikings win, and you bet that the Kansas Chiefs win. And how can we write a smart contract in such a way that after the game, the smart contract will immediately pay? So you don't have to come to me, because lawyers would say, well, if I win, you pay me. If you win, I pay you. But we want to automate this process. And then we have to write a bit more. We have to think, okay, this is how we could write it. There's a starting balance in the contract. Take money from A. Let's assume that I'm A. Update the starting balance. Take money from you, B. Record the outcome of the bet as per received signal. This could be something on the internet, online, that the smart contract will get a signal, okay, the Minnesota Vikings won. If the outcome is Minnesota Vikings, 1 send money to A, L send money to B. This is not computer code. This is just the way we can write the solution. But then the coder, they can then use, okay, this is simple. This is if this, then that. And he can then translate this into a code. So we, as lawyers, as any consultant, we understand the problem and then start thinking like this. If I go to the gym today, it's pizza for dinner, otherwise it's salad. So it's different from how we write contracts these days. It's much more, let's say, logical, straightforward, more in, again, if this, then that language. Then you might think, well, that's fantastic, but is this really useful? And I did some more research and I found that it is actually extremely useful if we start working like this. Whoa, I go a bit too fast here. So let me go back. One back more. So if you, I'm not going to explain them, but there's some talk about decentralized autonomous organizations and how they could disrupt the organization that we have right now. So on the left-hand side, you see the current organization, a traditional hierarchical organization with a CEO, top management, mid-level management, lower management, etc. But developers are now thinking of like a decentralized autonomous organization. And then you see here, you see minus, it's in a blockchain environment and it's decentralized. The organization on the left-hand side, we would use articles of association to deal with the way we manage this organization. On the right-hand side, the articles of association would be computer code. And if you look at the computer code, so I did some research, and you will find them yourself when you go to GitHub and you do decentralized autonomous organization, you will find a lot of code out there. And this is what a part of the code would look like. So when you see the double slash forwards, this is just language, not computer code. So you see the address where the amount will go to if the proposal is accepted, or if new curator is true, the proposed curator of the new DAO. And then you see address recipient, that's computer code. So whenever you see the double slash, it's basically a comment that explains the code. That's what many people think. But actually that's not true. What you see as the explanation is basically the comments that we write to explain the code to the computer. So if we start like with a problem and we come up with our own algorithm in plain English, and we give this to the coder and he translates it into computer code, we actually add lots of value. So that's one thing that we should understand more as a consultant is the engineering part. It's not only trying to figure out what kind of law applies or whether a new product is compliant with a law. We become part of the solution. We become part of the innovation ourselves. And for the entrepreneurs out there, that's how you select your consultant. Is he able to add value to my product, to my service immediately, not just to check things? So that's number one, which is engineering. Which brings me to number two, which I call humanizing. And this is more related to artificial intelligence. We are more and more living in this world where we see more and more sensors, lots of networks, IoT platforms, applications, blockchain platforms. They become more and more mainstream. And in this world is machine to machine. And we human beings, we operate in this world. And when we interact with a technology, we don't need a mouse anymore. We don't need a keyboard anymore. We just talk or we just walk somewhere and technology will relate or connect with us. So this means that technology is more about personalization. The interaction with technology will be automated. I mentioned here some of them: face recognition, sensors, voice control. Technology becomes more and more like a partnership, and technology becomes autonomous. So if I look at our light bulbs again, we have a smart building here in the Netherlands. Whenever you enter, things are happening. The sensors will detect you, and we could code it in such a way that whenever you go to the restroom, you will hear your favorite music automatically, immediately, without giving any command to anything. And in this world that we are entering into, I call this kind of a no rules world, which is all fantastic. But in order to make sure that we human beings trust the new technology, we have to humanize the technology. And that's where the protection by design comes in. So for instance, we want our privacy to be protected, but we don't. It's fantastic to have rules and regulations to do that. But what is much better is if the protection is built in the technology itself. So it's embedded in the technology. And that makes us both an engineer who can also humanize things. And believe it or not, at Signify, at a legal department, we have a lot of privacy officers, and they are more the traditional privacy officers. So they look at the rules and regulations, but they also start hiring more tech-savvy lawyers who can actually help with making the technology better and embedding the protection in the technology directly. So that's number 2 that we have to do. So it's engineering and it's humanizing. Which brings me to number 3. And this was a surprise to me, and I only realized it for a couple of months that this is much more important than I thought, which is communicating. Many consultants out there, and before this meeting, I was in another meeting with consultants, and they tend to write things in a very complicated way. And I think we have to learn to communicate and write things in a much more accessible way. And what you see on the right-hand side is an employment agreement, an employment contract used by a company called Tony Chocolonely, which is a Dutch company. And as you can see, that contract doesn't look like the contract that we normally have. It's more like a flow chart, makes it very interactive. And when you accept it, you even say hooray, which I think is kind of funny. Now this, I don't say to copy this, but I use this within my company, and it immediately encouraged my colleagues to start thinking differently about contracts, differently about NDA agreements, but also differently about policies and guidelines that we have out there. So, and this is becoming extremely important to both entrepreneurs and consultants, because we all understand technology is going very fast. I showed you, we see the exponential growth of technology, and we also realize that governments cannot handle tech regulation anymore. So companies become part of the regulations themselves. And this could be in the form of principles, it could be in the form of guidelines, this could be in the form of a co-creation effort with regulators. But in order to do this well, it's not just regulating in the old-fashioned way. This is the new regulation that we should all understand, which is legal design thinking. And this is about the technology. It's the legal thinking that we all know, but it's also the design thinking and the visual thinking, because it's writing things in plain English, but maybe using visuals to make things much more accessible and understandable to consumers or any other person who is using the technology. And this is one of the projects that I work on together with a couple of my colleagues within Signify. And it works. Just to give you an example, this happened in August of this year, when a tech reviewer was reviewing our connected lamps. You see them on the left-hand side. And normally these tech reviews are very simple. They focus on the hardware and the software. But all of a sudden, when you go through the tech review, he spends a couple of paragraphs on the privacy policy. And he has just something he said. He appreciated the privacy policy, which does a better job than most of explaining the company's data practices in plain English. And that made me realize that our work, not only because we can engineer or help engineer, or we can help humanize, but also the way we can help a company communicate the technology to the consumer is extremely, extremely important. But this means that we have to learn how to write in a more accessible, in an easier way, and even start using design and visuals to do this. So this is another course that I give now at Tilburg, is legal design thinking, but combined, not only focusing on the design, combined with the technology, the legal thinking, and the visual thinking. So one new course that I'm developing, because now we talk about coding for lawyers, we talk about AI for lawyers, we talk about design for lawyers, and I'm integrating them into a new course, which is all about gaming, and that refers to the title of this talk. I realized more and more that gaming is so much more important for lawyers than I thought. So I bought myself a gaming computer and started to analyze the gaming industry. The gaming industry is huge. I didn't even realize it was so big. But online games, that market is bigger than the box office market, which is tickets to cinemas, theaters, and recorded music together. And in this whole world, we see esports, we see distributors, we see streaming, we see hardware developers, software developers. Basically, it's a whole economy in itself, and we can learn so much from it. So things that I learn from playing games is, one, I understand communities much better. So if we move from a world that was focusing on products to a world that is focusing on services, to a world that is all about the experience, communities and community building is extremely important. But in order to understand how communities react on things that you do, you have to understand these communities better. And playing games, but also looking at the gaming industry might help. So one video which is fascinating is this person. His name is Edmund Gold, and he's a gamer, and he plays a game, World of Warcraft. But he's explaining how the game developer and the gaming company is making mistakes and how they hurt the community. And at the end of this video, he actually becomes very emotional, almost starts crying. But it shows you how important it is to with your product, with a service, with the way you communicate, that you also involve the community and make sure that you understand the community. If you don't do that, you might end up in this situation. There's another game which was a hype, No Man's Sky, that the hype was so big that the disconnect between what the game was actually about and what people expected was too huge. And that's what happened here. A lot of stuff written about it, a lot of litigation going on, because whenever they went online, whenever they went to the media, they basically build up the expectation. And at the end, the expectation was so much bigger than what the product actually could do, that it backfired. And I think this is extremely important, not only in gaming, but particularly in fintech and any other emerging tech companies that are out there, that we understand this the difference between hype and reality and how to deal with it before it actually gets a problem. We have to get a much better understanding of this. Which brings me almost to the end, and then I see already some questions, and so we will have a nice discussion, is how to deal with too big to be successful. When you look at the gaming industry, you see that the companies that become bigger and bigger, they tend to become less and less successful with with the communities and with their consumers. And one guy who understands it is Mike Morhaime. He was the founder of Blizzard. Blizzard became bigger and bigger, got acquired, and now it kind of backfires. So he left Blizzard, started a new company called Dreamhaven, which is much closer connected to the community, much more decentralized. And you see this in banking as well. So I was involved in a project in Georgia where the TBC Bank, Georgia, the country, where the TBC Bank set up a subsidiary Space, which is an fully online bank, much smaller, far away from headquarters. And the objective was to disrupt headquarters. But here you see how banks can deal with too big to be successful, and how they should learn from the gaming industry in order to make sure that they will remain relevant in the future. And this brings me to almost the last thing, how to make money. I will not spend too much time on this, but Fortnite, it's a very nice example. It's a free game, but they make tons of money by offering premium subscriptions, offering all kind of other perks that the user can buy. And this is how they are becoming disruptive. And the interesting thing with Fortnite is it's developed by Epic Games. And as you may know, they have some problems with Apple. And Apple seems to win now. And I don't like to make predictions, but I want to see what the world will look like in 5 to 10 years, because I think Epic understands the new generations much better than Apple does. Other things that you will see in the gaming industry is experimenting with new organizations. So you see the decentralized autonomous organizations that we briefly discussed as well. So MetaClan is a game developer, completely decentralized, built on the blockchain. So we learned so much from the gaming industry. Now, is this all relevant? Yes. So what you see here is my journey at Philips. So I started in the 90s, and everything we did back then was legal services. We even had a legal library, the biggest one in the Benelux. We had 3 librarians back then at the legal department. In the 2010s, when innovation became more important, we saw that the market and the world was changing. Lawyers, we became business partners. And now in the 2020s, we are not only business partners, we become really part of entrepreneurial teams. And the only way to play a real important role there and to add value is that we become more digitally savvy and we understand the technologies much better. But this also means that we understand engineering, humanizing, communicating, and learn a lot of self-learning, and the gaming industry can help you in your self-learning experience, because what you look at as an entrepreneur when you are looking for a consultant, or if you are a consultant, you want to have a T-shaped consultant. And in the 2000s, T-shaped meant somebody with legal or accounting knowledge, but also somebody who understood the business and understood project management. In the 2010s, we see that technology became a bit more important. But now in the 2020s, my role as a lawyer is become a co-creation expert. So yes, I still have legal knowledge, I have my legal skills, but also understand ethics in a digital environment much better. I'm much more multidisciplinary than I was before. I understand design, I understand technology, and I understand business engineering much better. So this is what I do now at Tilburg University. I want my students to become co-creators, and they love it, because eventually it's all about this. When you have a company or you have a new product, particularly in this world, it's impossible to understand whether you are right up front. And it is a quote from Gary Vaynerchuk. He's an entrepreneur and YouTuber. During COVID-19, he had something called Tea with Gary V. And one question was asked by the person on the right-hand side. Her name is Leanne, and she's an entrepreneur. And she asked him, how can I know what choices I should make today? How can I know what the world of tomorrow will look like? And he said, and I really love this quote, it's not about being right up front. It's about creating a system that helps you find right. And in that system, the entrepreneur and the consultant become much more partners. They have to understand each other better, but it's particularly the consultant that has to understand how to add value to the innovation in such a way that we consumers, we feel happy about it and we are willing to use that innovation. Thank you very much for your attention. This is how you can connect with me. I want you to join the conversation now, and we still have 12 minutes for questions or any other comments you have. I also see some in the chat, and I'm going to look at them right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erik. Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. That was very, very interesting. Yes, we do have quite a few questions, and some from lawyers, and we're going to start in that direction right now. I'd like Natasha Oskian from Allen & Overy, perhaps. Anthony, could you bring her live? Natasha's question for you, Erik.
Yeah, hi, Erik. Hi, everybody who's on the line, the loft, Nasir. Anthony, whoever is watching. Well, thank you very much, first of all, for this introduction. I'm not a lawyer, actually, I'm an auditor. I don't know if it's worse or not in the technological terms, but I work in a law firm, so I work with lawyers, and I'm in their legal tech group as well. So I think my question to you would be like, among all the technology available to lawyers today, and you mentioned some of them earlier, do you mind to pick just one that you believe will profoundly impact the legal profession, especially in Luxembourg? So here I'm talking about financial services in the next years. And I say in the next years, you can go until from now to, let's say, plus 30.
Plus 30.
Yeah, if you can. You
Well,
can go to 5, you can go to the next year. It's up to you.
So your question is, which technology will impact the legal profession?
Yeah, the legal profession most, especially here in Luxembourg, where normally most of the lawyers doing like kind of financial services.
Yes.
So we don't have companies like Philips, maybe not yet, or not so many.
No, but that's this is the thing. Okay. Before I answer your question, not for 30 years probably. That would be great if I could do that. But I think one mistake that I often see is that people who work in a particular area, finance, healthcare, that they keep focusing on that industry. But I think industry boundaries are disappearing really quickly, and I think we can learn from each other. So a lighting company can learn from what's happening in the finance industry, can learn what's happening in the gaming industry. So that's number one. Lawyers, okay, one thing, yes, that will change the world of lawyers is the automation. So we will see more and more legal tech. What I've seen so far, it's not that impressive yet, but it will not take long that we will see AI or tools that can help us drafting contracts or doing other things in the world of compliance. But, and this is just my view, what these legal tech tools and reg tech tools do is, again, it's technology that focuses on our role as lawyers or accountants in the old world. So then we assume that accountants will still do annual reports, for instance, and I don't think that's going to happen, because we will have continuous reporting. We will have an AI checking things, and there will not be an accountant necessary for an annual report anymore in the near future. That's my view. But I think if you really ask me how the world is going to change, I think Internet of Things will become extremely important also in the financial industry. I think what we have seen is payment services between devices, cars, buildings, anything where the consumer will have a frictionless payment experience as well. That will be the next big thing, for sure. And this could be AI, but I don't think we should look at artificial intelligence or blockchain. These things are actually augmenting and accelerating each other significantly. So, for instance, in the world of the Internet of Things, the more connected devices we have, the more data we get, the smarter the devices. The smarter the devices, the more we are going to use them. So they are going to accelerate significantly. But I think the Internet of Things and how we as consumers operate in this, and how banks, what the role of banks is in the world of the Internet of Things, is, to me, one of the most important things that is not developed really well yet.
Thank you very much, Erik. And before everybody chips in, because I know there are some questions, you mentioned that you're doing some courses. Is it like in the university, or is it now online? So, well, given the COVID and everything,
so
are you on Skillshare? Or?
I developed them on at the university. Then I also do things at law firms, and now I'm probably will have an online course on coding for lawyers, but that will be very broad, like beginning of next year. But I will let. I think the best thing is that I will let Loft know, and then we can see how they can participate as well.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Natasha. Erik, if I could maybe just sort of on a tangent to Natasha's question. With all the technology, you talk about there also not just understanding the technology, but the use of technology within the legal profession. I mean, one of the big things I think from looking at it from the client perspective, you know, that it seems to be a big issue for a lot of people I know anyway, is this consistency and transparency paradigm that, you know, we all deal with. You know, how do we know firstly, a lawyer is any good? Number two is, how do we know that the work produced for us is the right work, given that you can go to two lawyers and they'll do two completely different things? And thirdly is the transparency element. How do we know we're paying a fair price for this? Do you think that these things will also be resolved with technology in the coming future?
Yes, both directly as well as indirectly. Directly, because a lot of legal advice, a lot of services are going to be automated, and you can see it already. The change, like a client who came to you like 20 years ago, they came with a question, and then you were offering the legal services. Now they did some Google search themselves, so they might think they know the answer, or they found the answer. That's dangerous, of course, on the one hand, but you see that we as lawyers or consultants, we have to be a bit more careful because things are already becoming more transparent. That will only increase. So that's the direct answer would then be yes. But indirectly, definitely yes, because I think consultants are becoming more important as in co-creation teams. And in order to sell themselves, they have to communicate also clearly, and they have to become a bit more transparent in what they do as well. So definitely there will be ways for you to figure out whether this person is good or not. But I think just talking to them and seeing how they act and how much they know about the technology will give you a lot of information already. And that's where many of my colleagues are still way behind. Whenever you talk about fintech with them, they come up with the rules and regulations, but they don't really try to see how can we help you develop a product that can actually go to the market, or how can we help you make sure that the regulator understands this product much better. Of course, there are law firms out there, but I think that will be the next big thing. And some law firms I know start to do this better, becoming more transparent, offering more information online, writing blogs, useful ones, not only, oh, there's a new law, but trying to give you already a lot of information for free. And I think that's very, very useful, and that will only increase the quality.
Thank you, Erik. Yeah, it's a very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how this will all change. Next question, I think, from Dan, our usual stalwart, Dan Feeney. Dan, let's get you live and talking to Erik.
Hi, Erik. Nice to see you. I'm an American living in London, been doing fintech for 5 years, and I'll be doing it for another 30. It's great to hear from a lateral thinking lawyer, and I enjoyed your slides. But my question is, and I'd make a quick comment on gaming, that check out Razor Fintech out of Singapore. They had a hackathon a couple months ago where in a weekend they built 150 banks, end-to-end, all digital. So that should scare the bejesus out of incumbents anyway. So in 57, there was the Treaty of Rome, and in 73, the UK joined the European Economic Community, and Brexit's happening. So the Magna Carta, the Napoleonic Code, civic versus common law, nobody's talking about this. And I've looked at fintech directly, and there's at least 10 areas of massive divergence, from internet to commerce to to data, to privacy. It is a bloody, sorry, it's Friday. It's a fucking mess. I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but this is the question. Okay, to me, this will not be a solution that we have next year. So we might need a bit more time there. But I think the solution will be that it will be the regulator themselves. And this is interesting because I had a longer discussion earlier this week about the role of regulators in this whole world of fintech or emerging tech. And I think that's where the mindset has to change significantly. I think they have to understand that their role will be completely different. They cannot regulate like they did before. They have to create context or frameworks and start and have to become part of co-creation teams themselves. They try to. It's really difficult. We organized a meeting where we had industry and regulators together. And what happened is that regulators started to ask questions to industry more than the other way around, because they wanted to figure out how insurance companies, what they are working on, what banks are doing, because they have no idea. What kind of fintech is out there, because they have no idea. That kind of scared me. And I think that's where the solution is. They should get training fast. Problem there is, and it's Friday and this is a closed meeting, when you give regulators training, they should change their mindset. And I generalize here. There are many that work at regulators that have an open mindset, but there are also many that sit there with a kind of arrogancy, like, yeah, we are the regulator and yeah, we know everything. They shouldn't. And that's where I bring in, the reason why I brought in gaming, I did it on purpose, because when I told my students to game, or I basically wrote an article why lawyers have to game, and it was a shock. Lawyers don't game, and they didn't, and even the lawyers who gamed, they didn't want to talk about it because then they would not be taken seriously. And I think that's a mindset shift that we need to have really soon. And now I talk about Europe, particularly in Europe, because otherwise we run a risk that we are really getting behind the things. We see the developments in Asia, but I also see lots of developments in Africa, and they move faster than we do. And still, that's something that they don't believe. Whenever you mention that, they say, oh, no, that's just, that's not true. But it is true. And it's the sense of urgency. So I don't say that in Africa they are ahead of what's happening in the US or in Asia or in Europe, but it's a sense of urgency that at least some people have that we don't have. And we should really develop that really quickly in order to make sure that we will have technology that will improve society and will solve lots of the problems that we have. And COVID-19, use it as one example. I hate COVID-19 and I hate everything that's happening. As was mentioned, I'm a co-owner of a restaurant. My wife runs the restaurant. It's closed now. It's terrible. But COVID-19 also creates lots of opportunities to rethink certain things and to reset things and to understand maybe the banking industry wasn't that good. Maybe we can improve it. And that's where I don't see a lot of things happening. And that has to change as soon as possible. So my answer is we have to get much more training to regulators, and we have to have regulators with a more open mind than we have right now. And they have to become co-regulators and co-creators themselves, more than regulators.
Great. Thank you very much, Erik. Thanks, Dan, again, as usual, for participating. Anne-Sophie from LuxHub. Let's get Anne-Sophie online.
Yes, here I am. Thank you very much for the presentation, and I'm happy to see that we're going to have a new generation of tech-savvy lawyers coming. And these tech-savvy lawyers, they will probably expect actually to have all the legal tools and IT tools that will enable them to provide the best legal advice, the more product-oriented. And what we see in some countries is that bar associations, they are promoting with incubators some legal texts, but they are also trying to stop some legal texts that might be competing. I would like to know, how is it in the Netherlands? Is the bar association promoting that kind of companies? Are there some breaks? Are they stopping some companies? So how is it?
My personal view, I think that's always the best in the sense of when you answer these questions, it's very traditional. And we are now at the point where they think, because of COVID actually, COVID accelerated things a bit. So now notaries accept meetings online. Oh, that could not happen before COVID. Now they accept certain court cases to be dealt with online. And I think that's where we are. And that's definitely not far enough. I think the Bar Association in the Netherlands, they are kind of passive. Certain law firms are a bit more active. So you see law firms that set up labs and incubators. But then they immediately have the question, what can they do according to the Bar Association rules?
Yes.
And I think it's a very good point. But it's basically the same answer as I gave Dan. It's bar associations, regulators that have to have a more open mind. But it's people, and this means that these organizations are still very hierarchical, and it's not the best idea wins culture. So the problem is, whenever they bring in a younger person with great ideas, he might leave that organization really quickly to go somewhere else where they will listen. And I think what they have to do, they have to listen, be more open-minded, and understand what's happening, because they are really behind of what we already see in practice. And yes, we then start in Europe, look at Amazon, look at Google, and look how bad things are. And I see these points, and I respect my privacy, but we should also understand that the solutions might be in technology as well, not only in rules and regulations. And right now we focus too much on the rules and regulations, trying to break things up, instead of how can we in Europe come up with solutions that are much better, technical solutions that are much better. Then we can become winners. Mm-hmm. And I think Luxembourg, in fintech, for sure, Luxembourg can play a very important role here. But when I am in Luxembourg, I don't know. But if I look then at Liechtenstein, which is not really European, but there they don't seem to see it either. So they are very much looking at the directives and, let's say, the old-fashioned way of regulating, which again, I am not against that. But I think we have to move regulation to the next level as well and become much smarter about regulation. And I hate the word smart regulation. Let's call it intelligent regulation, but that's much more out there that can help consumers and protect consumers. So in the Netherlands, I don't know. I was in Denmark, and when I talk to them, they think they are behind, but they seem to be a bit ahead of us, actually.
Okay.
So the Nordics are a bit ahead of us. Norway, Denmark. So yeah, we should have them at the table as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much, Anne-Sophie. I'm going to hand over now to Anthony just to wrap up the session. Thank you all for participating. Very much appreciated. Thank you, Erik. And I'll let Anthony just top and tail.
Okay, I can quickly, because this will take 10 seconds. I see one question there still. And I like that question. So the smart contracts and enforcement and the code that might be wrong. I think that's...
Yeah, I'm here.
There you go, Alan. There you go. You're in.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for the great presentation. I mean, I liked your presentation because there was an example in it, which is a really good one of the bet, where the code is wrong, in fact, because even when it doesn't account for a draw, and I would win even when there was a draw.
Yeah, there is no draw in American football, so that helps. But in normal soccer, yes, there would be a draw. And then the algorithm should have said, if there's a draw, then they will get their money back.
Who's going to determine that the code was wrong?
Well, this is extremely important. That's why I wanted to answer this question. I think that's before we get there. I think we have to make sure, in order to make sure that the code is right, I think that's where consultants play a much more important role. And then still the code can be wrong. But what I saw in my experiment is that what the coders came up with was completely wrong. It was an automation of the supply chain. And we asked them, what if the product is defect? They said, oh, no problem. Product will go back and then the money will also go back. I said, but where did it happen? Was it the manufacturer or was it the distributor? They had no clue. What about insurance? They had no clue. So they really had to go back to the drawing table. But with our help, we could come up with much smarter code and much smarter solutions. And that's where we can get better code. I don't say all the code will be right, but it will be much, much better than if we are not involved from the beginning. But then we have to become co-creators. Then many of my lawyer friends will then say, well, this means that the coder should understand law. Bad luck there, because the companies, they see that their business models will be in code in IoT, and they are, let's say, in the lead. We have to follow, and then we have to make sure that that product or service is actually working best. Then companies will see that we consultants can, what we can add as value will be competitive advantage. And that will, that's our role in the future. And I am here 100% certain. So you might not agree with me, then we get back in 5 years, but this is how I see my role in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alain. Thank you, Erik.